everyone, thank you for coming back to Miami Historic Homes. We're here today with Dr. Paul George. We're going to talk a little bit about Coconut Grove, how it began, and what it has transformed into today. So, Dr. George, you want to tell us a little bit about where we are and how we got here?
Well, thank you, Wesley. Good to be here on a beautiful day. We are really standing in an area from here across the street, which is McFarland, into what we call Peacock Park, where modern Coconut Grove began. There were peoples here going back likely thousands of years. Because the water's nearby, we've got a ridge, it was safe for people to live. We knew them as the Cuesta Indians. But its modern incarnation begins when something called the Peacock Inn opens in today's Peacock Park in 1882, called formerly the Bayview Inn. And people started coming down there as visitors, and they saw this place and fell madly in love with it. Its beauty, its whole ambiance. And so you begin to see the makings of a community in the 1880s in this area. In fact, the founders were Charles and Isabella Peacock, who were British. They had come to the wilds of southeast Florida way back in the late 1870s, and they opened the inn a few years later. And as things progressed and more people visited and more people said, I'm not leaving here, I'm going to make my home here along the bayfront as you're moving south, Charles Peacock opened on this site a general store. And within that general store, we're talking the 1880s, a library would evolve in the 1890s in that store.
So the general store was right there across from here?
It was right over here in this area here, likely right here. They had what they call a bathing casino across Bayshore Drive, where people would swim in the waters and they could change in the bathing casino. It had nothing to do with gambling, but that's what they called it, a casino. That was across the way. The Women's Club was one of the first institutions in Coconut Grove. It was founded by Flora McFarlane, for whom this street is named, that I'm pointing at, McFarlane Road, in 1891.
And that's where we're standing today,
And we're standing right now. They built this clubhouse, which replaced a wood frame clubhouse. They built this about 1919. So it's over 100 years of age, which is really old for South Florida history. And they did a lot of great things to uplift and upgrade the community itself. Out of the little library that was at the Peacock store would evolve the Coconut Grove Library, which sat where this 1963 iteration of the library is. It's a great building.
That was a rebuild.
Well, they did. They had a smaller building, and actually a mock-up of the smaller building is right by the entrance of this building. This is a 1963 building, and it's built in such a great way, designed by a man named T. Tripp Russell, where he has this wraparound veranda to take advantage of the beauty of the environment. And I guess at one time you could put the windows up or open the doors, and the breeze would come in from the bay. So you've got the Women's Club, you've got the library, you had the Peacock Inn.
I always thought it was super interesting that Ralph Monroe's wife is buried like in the middle of this entire place.
Yeah, she is, Eva Monroe. And it was unmarked until recent years, and I often wondered how many tens of thousands of people walked by that as part of the art festival every February and had no idea who was there or what it was. They finally put a marker there. But she died in 1882, and when he decided to make this his home in the mid-80s, 1880s, he had her body disinterred from the north bank of the Miami River and reburied here. And then he, of course, would build the Barnacle, which is an absolute jewel up the road somewhat.
What were the people like who came to Coconut Grove in the 1880s?
That's a great question. They were very accomplished people, very eccentric people. You had a writer of boys' stories, Kirk Monroe, his wife, Mary Barr Monroe, a great environmentalist, a writer herself. You had Ralph Monroe, who was kind of like a Renaissance guy. He designed, among other things, shallow draft sailboats. So he was accomplished. You had two titled counts, Jean de Hedeville, who was Belgian. He had fought in something called the Franco-Prussian War in 1870-71. You had Count James Nugent, whose grandfather was a marshal, a very high ranking in Napoleon Bonaparte's armies at the beginning of the 1800s. I mean, all of these incredible people. Flora McFarlane was the founder of the Women's Club, then called the Coconut Grove Housekeepers Club, today's Women's Club. She was the first school teacher in the community, founder of St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, the first woman homesteader in the community. I mean, it was just a semblance of really accomplished people, and their achievements and their eccentricities really made this kind of a counterculture place. Yeah. So that if you fast forward this to the 1950s, you've got beatniks frolicking in Peacock Park. The Peacock Inn had closed in the early 1900s. And then they were followed by hippies who took over the park and took over the street here. It's just always been a source of counterculture. The crazy parades like the King Mango Strut.
Oh, yeah.
that mattress thing, whatever it's called, a bed something or other parade. I mean, it's always been like that.
At the Arts Festival.
The Arts Festival, of course, and that began in 1963. And one of the inspirations for that was the Coconut Grove Playhouse. The Playhouse opened up as a playhouse in '56, and they were featuring a play, Irma la Douce, that took place, it focused on Paris. And so they decided, listen, why don't we invite the artists in the community, there were many then in 1963, and have them put their wares out, their paintings out, and that will showcase the play which depicts the left bank in Paris where there's a lot of artists operating. And that's how the festival itself started. So you've got so many things going on here historically. It's one of the richest places historically in Southeast Florida. Okay, great. So here we are in Silver Bluff. We know it today really is the Northern Grove, but believe it or not, this area was named for these great bluffs that overlook the waters of Biscayne Bay once upon a time. There's been a lot of landfill that has pushed out the land for the equivalent of a couple more blocks. Silver Bluff, the neighborhood, encompassed this area. It was incorporated as a town in 1921 and then annexed to the city of Miami in 1925. And one of the great things about Silver Bluff is we've got documentation on settlers going back to at least the 1880s. Remember the Peacock family, Jolly Jack Peacock, took advantage of a federal law, the Homestead Act of 1862, and acquired land a little bit, which would be northwest of where we are now, in the mid-1880s. And he's really among the very first documented settlers, but many more would come. We'd have developing companies 110 years ago developing subdivisions in this neighborhood, known universally then as Silver Bluff. The variety of homes in here are phenomenal. We've got this Oolitic limestone house built in 1920. This is where Stanley Cohen, a prominent Coconut Grove developer, was murdered in his sleep in 1986. His wife was convicted of hiring some hitmen to take him out. It was a cause célèbre in Miami circles in the mid-1980s. Across the street, you've got a great wood frame, which characterized a lot of the early homes going back to the late 19th century. The wood, for the most part, was Dade County pine, which is a very durable wood, not impervious to termites, but a very tough wood. If you think of how many hurricanes have come through here and how these buildings have stood, you get a sense of how solid they are. The ridge that we talked about, we're going to be seeing it now. I want to walk you down to probably the most dramatic example of that name, Silver Bluff, and you'll get a sense of the water line. It's a huge bluff or a ridge that moves south, and then when it gets down to South Dade, moves inland somewhat over to the area around US 1. But it's one of the great phenomena of Miami's subtropical ambiance. So let's walk on down here and take a look at the Silver Bluff. We've seen it. Okay, thank you. We've seen an Oolitic limestone home to be replaced in construction in the 20s by concrete blocks. We've seen wood frame, Dade County pine across the street. This is South Bay Shore Drive. This little road here was a dirt road connecting Coconut Grove with today's Brickell Avenue neighborhood going back to the late 1880s, early 1890s. Again, the waters are just on the other side, the waters of Biscayne Bay. It was like a jungle trail. You would find at those times Florida panthers and what have you. And then we got another great style that becomes very dominant in the 1920s, the Mediterranean style of architecture across the street. And that is a style you'll find all over Southeast Florida during the great boom era of the 20s, as well as other parts of Florida like Tampa, and even Tallahassee has some boom era Mediterranean style homes, barrel tile roof, balconies, arched windows, textured stucco are all parts of that Mediterranean style. I want to walk you down here though and show you this bluff because it's really one of a kind. It really sets off this neighborhood as well as much of South Florida from other parts of the United States. So let's look at this. Here's the namesake then for the original name of the neighborhood, Silver Bluff. It's silver because it's gray. But when the sun shines at certain times of the day, especially in the afternoon, it takes on a silver sheen, thus Silver Bluff. A bluff is an elevated area. And what we find on top of the bluff is a home built in the early post-World War II era. So it's a home that is just dominated by its immensity and by the expensive nature of the building materials in the home itself. Look at the bluff here. Think of this as one of the original shorelines going back millennia, thousands and thousands of years. So you get a good look at it here. 1950s era home on top of the ridge. They're not going to have to worry about flooding here, but this is what really stands out, is this bluff here. And I want you to think about this bluff extending for miles at one time before development came to this area of southeast Florida. And then again, of course, all the foliage that's so common, the royal palm tree over there, native to the Everglades, as well as other parts of the Caribbean and the West Indies. You got the ficus tree, native to India. Look at the way it's putting down roots from its branches. It's all over the place here. Again, a very busy road. We'll see another representation of a home a little further up. You can see the barrel tile roof across the street of that Mediterranean style home built in the mid-1920s, when that was the style. Across the way, you see a home over there. It's post-World War II, but its columns are meant to conjure up the image of something neoclassical. You can get a sense of the ridge here. The elevation here is amazing. This is one of the highest points where that house sits in all of greater Miami. To be anywhere above 12 or 14 feet means that you're one of the highest points in the entire county. And this house represents that. Let's see what's over here. Yeah, got it, thank you. And incidentally, you got some neo-colonial elements of this house here, post-World War II. One of the things we haven't really talked about are who some of the people that lived here over time. The first three presidents of the University of Miami lived along South Bay Shore Drive in Silver Bluff, today's North Grove. A guy named Charlie Cranon, from whom Cranon Park is named, he lived here. A three-time Miami policeman, police chief, H. Leslie Quigg, lived here. The names just go on and on and on. So many prominent people. Dr. Thomas Zaidon, a noted surgeon at one time, he lived here. And you can see, if you take a straight look down, the shoreline is maybe 3 or 4 blocks down. That is essentially fill. And then you've got Biscayne Bay.
Want to go into what it's turned into now?
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk here, right?
Sure.
So we talked about the frame houses already.
Right.
We talked about the
Mediterranean.
colonial or 50s. We talked
Right.
about all of that. So, and then maybe we just close it with, today many of these homes, today Coconut Grove is going through a bit of a transition into more of a modern area.
Right.
Hopefully a lot of these homes will survive over the next
Sounds
20,
good.
30 years. I think that's
Sounds good, yeah.
Is that a good end? Okay.
Sounds good. So what we have today, of course, in a very affluent area in greater Miami is an area that's in transition once again, and you're beginning to see modernist homes either being built on vacant lots or replacing older homes. And we're just hopeful that some of these great homes that we've seen in this little stroll will be here 20, 30, 40 years from now. But it is a neighborhood that everybody wants to live in, and if you can afford it, this is a place you want to be. And they're building these grandiose homes, especially of this modernist style of architecture, kind of like the big boxes, sitting atop the ridge. And you can see in the case of this home with some colonial elements, they've retained part of the ridge as you move in off of the street, which is really fascinating to see this. Of course, it's all gated.
I think we're good there, no? Yeah.
Great, thanks. Sounds good.
So the street where Tina Treyas's house is. So we talk about how it was founded and then the houses that you could find in Little Havana.
Okay.
Simple?
Her street is right down here.
I know.
Yeah.
Exactly. So just a little quick walk, and I feel like we could just do it all in one shot.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll reference her place and the places on that street.
Yeah, don't say her name. She's
Okay.
a realtor.
Right, exactly.
But just what I would like to do is, and it's okay, I could chime in every second because he could cut that out. If
Whatever you want, yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
But I say we go through here. How did it become Little Havana?
Okay.
Go through what the different properties here.
Okay.
Ball and Chain is before Little Havana era, I think.
Oh
right?
yeah, 1934 they opened.
Exactly. So go through that, take them through that, cut over, and be like, now we're going to show you some of the houses that you can find that make up this area.
Okay.
Make sense?
Okay, sounds good. Now, are we going to then go to the houses?
Yeah.
Here we are in Cayocho, known by many different names and numbers in the past. It was 20th Street when early Miami got launched in 1896, which was a wooded area out in the woods. The Shenandoah side was undeveloped and farmland as late as the 20s in most parts of today's Shenandoah. Across the street from what we know as Cayocho today, which becomes kind of like a brand name by the late 1960s, Across the street was the Riverside neighborhood that goes back to the beginning of the 1900s from the river moving west, of course. So we've got Riverside, Shenandoah. Everybody knew these neighborhoods by these names through the 50s into the 60s, but there was such a tremendous influx of Cuban refugees from the Castro dictatorship that we all know it universally by the late 60s as Little Havana and as Cayocho, a very famous Parade Street, Demonstration Street, what have you. So what I want to do is let's walk west. I want to show you some really good things down here. And the first place I'm going to show you is Domino Park, just up the road a little bit. So this is Domino Park, and it has such a great story. This was a drive-in restaurant in 1947 called Baker's Drive-In. And then it was a used car lot, and then it was a vacant lot. One day in 1963, some men who were part of the Assault Brigade 2506, which attempted to overthrow Castro in 61 unsuccessfully, they were meeting across the street at what was at one time the Syrian Lebanese Club. And after this meeting in 63, a couple guys said, listen, let's go across this lot over here and play dominoes. Well, the rest is history. So for the last 57 years, this has been one of the great gathering places and one of the first great tourist spots in Little Havana, Domino Park. You've got domino, you've got chess, you've got card games going on. It's loud, it's heavily visited. This street alone in Little Havana are welcoming about 3 to 3.5 million people. No mask. See, I told you that's these type of sketchy people. Anyway, and I do a lot of tours here, and I get interrupted all the time. So you've got Domino Park, probably the first major tourist spot in Little Havana from the time it became what it is today, beginning in 1963. I want you to look at the Tower Theater, which opened in 1926, became a Womeco chain theater in 1931. This was the first theater we know of in Dade County to offer Spanish subtitles to English language movies. Womeco was the largest theater chain in the state of Florida. This was part of it. Miami-Dade College now operates this from the city of Miami on a lengthy lease. And it's also one of the great satellite theaters for the Miami Film Festival. You got it over here. A one-of-a-kind place. And again, for so many Cubans, this was their first theater in the Miami area. Let's walk on down to the crosswalk. I'm going to take you across the street and show you some other interesting things. Come on with me. Sadly, because of this viral scourge, this Domino Plaza, as well as the park, is closed now. This was a through street as recently as 15 to 18 years ago. City, state procured the property. They made a Domino Plaza, and it's really interesting because not just the dominoes, but these plant bins over here. The tiles there were designed by two identical twins who came over here during the Mario boat lift in 1980. And they were really trained as engineers. They became great ceramicists. And their tile work permeates the quarter. We're going to see another example of it very shortly. Meantime, if you look north, you can see Marlin Ballpark. Marlin Ballpark sits on the site of the fabled Orange Bowl Stadium. Orange Bowl hosted 5 Super Bowls, umpteen national championships, 1 baseball game. It was where a lot of Mario refugees in 1980 received federal assistance, food, and what have you. Meanwhile, across the street on the corner of the Little Havana Cigar Factory and Shop, this is a building, it's got Art Deco features to it, built in 1941, and it hosted the Syrian Lebanese Club for 10 years before they moved into the Rhodes neighborhood. What I'd like to do is go to the crosswalk and walk over by a zoo car and ball and chain, and then we're going to walk into the neighborhood and take a look at some of the great homes here. So let's walk on over here. You can see how busy the street is. It's like this much of the day. So many little restaurants. We passed by a couple of them already. Little cigar places all over the place. I think we can cross now. Such a wonderful little ice cream parlor here. It opened up in the summer of 2011. Susie Battle, who was the founder along with some partners, had studied the preparation of ice cream manufacturing at Penn State University, came down here and opened this up, and has done a land office business since its opening 9 years ago. Azucar featuring a lot of Cuban flavored, subtropical fruit flavored ice creams. Visitors just love to come here. It just gives you another sense of how subtropical and exotic the Miami area is. I'm going to take you over to the Ball and Chain. The Ball and Chain is really a legendary place. It opened up in September of 2014, but really the Ball and Chain opened up in 1934 as a bar and night spot. And what really set it apart in its earlier iteration from everything else was the great entertainers that came here, including such great African-American entertainers as Count Basie, Billie Holiday. We're talking now the mid-1950s. Some great white entertainers like Gene Krupa, Chet Baker, another black pianist, Harry the Hipster. This place was unreal. So the question arises, why did the Ball and Chain, and that was its name at that time too, attract such great entertainers? And the answer is, Calle Ocho is a federal highway. It's Highway 41. So before the superhighway days, a lot of cars would come from the Midwestern United States all the way along 41. 41 also includes a Tamiami Trail. Take that from Southwest Florida across the Everglades into Miami. So this became quite a night spot for a lot of people. Bill Fuller and his partners bought the property about 15 to 20 years ago. And they opened it up, as I mentioned before, 6 years ago as a Ball and Chain. It's done a phenomenal business. Live music all the time, great cocktails, great food in the tapas form. So this has become one of the great hangouts of Little Havana, not just for locals, but for a lot of tourists too. Across the street, you've got a wonderfully, typically Cuban restaurant that's El Exquisito. And Exquisito has, among other things, what we call the Ventanita. Look at the Ventanita, the guy standing there. You can order coffee there, various pastries, pastelitos at the window. Probably invented the whole idea of Ventanita by a man named Philippe Valls, who owns some other properties here. Today he owns, of course, the Versailles and La Carreta. But that becomes a convenient way to get a Cuban coffee or get some espresso, get your buzz for the day, and then move on to business. You can get a good look here at the Tower Theater from this vantage point too. It's got Art Deco elements to it. When it was overhauled in 1931, they put in the glass brick and they put the rounded contours here. It's a mock-up of the RKO Tower in Hollywood, California. So why don't we do this? Let's walk through this really great neighborhood of Shenandoah. The name comes from developers who developed subdivisions here by the name of Shenandoah. It conjures up the image of the beautiful Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk on down here, cross again, and walk into the neighborhood.
Is the audio going to be okay? Because we could get a lot of that noise down. I just want to know.
I could take you around the side for a minute if you want to look at one of the great paintings. Do you want to do that, or you'd rather just go into the neighborhood? Doesn't matter.
Let's go to the neighborhood.
Okay, let's do that. Let me hit this.
Maybe, depending on how it is. If the audio doesn't work, I could maybe pay you extra, George, to record at your house.
Okay.
Right? Like just like you send us over the voice recording.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it'll work.
If it doesn't, for whatever reason.
Yeah, just let me know. That'd be
figure
fun.
it out.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
Because here it's bad. Like I thought it was going to be nice.
It's amazing. Even with the downturn, it's just a bustling street.
Yeah.
And these restaurants are busy at night now. Everything's outside. Some things are inside.
That's what they're having to do everywhere, no?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Did they get it? Oh, you're taking B-roll. comfortable with the mask on, right?
I'm fine, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'm fine, not a problem. We're all set to go.
Oh my God, did you get that guy on footage screaming at us?
Oh my God.
It was a little bit, it was like half into the frame.
Oh my God. I'm sure his audio will come out.
What a character. Oh my God.
Oh my God, that was crazy.
I know. So we'll walk around here through the lot, just down. It's a long, long block, and then we'll be there. Oh, they are. This is a crazy place. We could talk about the Walkway of Stars, or just leave it alone if you want.
No, we don't have to talk about. Maybe when we get closer.
Oh,
Yeah, I was gonna tell you to get that footage.
you want me to talk about it? I can.
Yeah, you can talk about it
Okay.
if you want.
We're looking at, we just come across the Walkway of Stars. It was instituted in 1989. It's kind of like our version of the Hollywood Walkway of Stars. First star was Gloria Estefan, logically, naturally. And so many other entertainers and even athletes and business people have had their stars placed down here. Whenever you want me to get mic'd up, so we can do that, Stephen, I'd please.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah?
Go ahead and give this to you.
No, okay. Okay, you tell them that you work on that. Then you open up the side there, and then you have to go upstairs, and then there's
Do me a favor and just talk there.
Yeah. We're in the old Shenandoah neighborhood. I just wanted to take you down through here and look at a great block, 11th Street. There are so many singular homes. So that's where we're heading right now.
no, you have to go Riza. So Riza's the only one who has access to that. Not me. Yeah, I don't have access to that place. Yeah, but okay, yeah, I didn't know what you were talking about. Yeah, she's the only one with access.
Nope, sorry.
There was a renter going in there.
It's got fixed, that's why it's kind of slipping off, but I'll be okay.
Yeah.
Deal with that.
Yeah, I gotta get some wireless ones so that this doesn't happen next time.
Are we heading to the...
Yes, it's right on the corner. You can just see the beauty of this neighborhood, this Shenandoah neighborhood. The next street over has a couple of jewels. We're going to be seeing a couple of jewels or more now. Get the Royal Christianity straight ahead. Natives from the island of Madagascar up the southeast coast of Africa. This has been a real summertime tree going back about 100 years in Miami. Bring it down here. Again, this was farmland and undeveloped land as late as the beginning of the 20s. So much of what you're looking at was developed at that time and after World War II.
Let's hit a quick pause under that tree. I just want to check my focus real quick, make sure we're still good.
Already getting my steps in. Also a pool right now because of this.
Yeah, we've got a pool and we're really lucky.
Yeah.
I use it each day. It's been fabulous.
Crazy how hot
Yeah,
it is.
yes, and that pool just cools you off.
Right, so it's a great block.
It is a great block. So we're approaching 11th Street, and this was a neighborhood known as Shenandoah. And the street, 11th Street, which is the cross street right up here, was known actually as Shenandoah Boulevard when it went on the market in the mid-1920s. And what's interesting about it is we're going to see a great array of architecture in one block on both sides of the street. So let's head straight south and take a left up here and move east. How about this wood frame here, Dade County pine, built in 1925 when the neighborhood was just getting underway in terms of development. It was a home at one point of the daughter and her family of the first mayor of Miami, John B. Riley. She lived here from 25 on. Later she would move to a church I'm going to show you very shortly. It later became the home of a man named William Mertens, who was a federal judge. And in one case, apparently it was a crime case, he ruled in a way that upset some crime figures. They threatened his life, so this house was staked out at the outset of the 1960s by police for several months. But look at this jewel here. It's been wonderfully restored. The people living here include an architect and a realtor. And the architect and his wife are fastidious in the way they restored it. They didn't renovate it, they restored it. They brought it back to what they believe was the original look. I've got a little Havana book that I've written that includes this house in it, and this is just the way it looked once upon a time. Look at this here. How about the screen porch over here? The Indian cherry hedge, a Suriname cherry. And this is a great street, and it's also a best kept secret because it dead ends. Why does it dead end? Because that's a different subdivision east of here. That is the Westmoreland subdivision. This is the Shenandoah subdivision. Look at the array of architecture. Mediterranean across the street. Then you've got this neo-colonial, look at these columns here. This was a home of a longtime county clerk, E.B. Leatherman. He took care of the county courts. The circuit court is today the fourth largest circuit court in the United States. These mahoganies were only planted about 15 or 18 years ago. Now let me take you down and show you some more of these jewels. Across the street beyond the neo-colonial or neoclassical look is a small Mediterranean style building, and these were all built in the mid-1920s, everything we're looking at now, when this area was cleared for development. And then we come to what I think is probably the most astonishing of the buildings on this one block. We'll be looking across the street shortly too, but look at this here. This neoclassical look here with the entranceway. This was built by the first mayor of Miami. He was elderly then, he wasn't in good health. His name was John B. Riley. He and his wife had money. They had invested early in Miami. Miami only became a city in 1896. They were buying land soon after. They wanted to move closer to their daughter, son-in-law, and 3 grandchildren, so they built here in 1927. He died a year later. And in 1954, this became a Russian Orthodox church, Saints Peter and Paul. But how about this here? And you're looking at the original casement windows and on the first floor, and it's just amazing. I've been in here many times with groups. That's the sacristy toward the eastern rear, and that's the sanctuary where the worship services are held. And then across the street, how about this here with a double dormer, this 1925 home here. It's only had 3 or 4 families that have ever lived there in a period of almost 100 years. Just love the open porch. There was a swing there for a long time. Then you've got a really unusual looking building. Look at this across the street here. I don't know how to describe it. Some people might say it has influences of Dutch colonial architectural style. I just think it's a real whimsical looking building. This also was built in the mid-1920s. Look at this here. Isn't this something? The roof lines. But it's just a jewel of a block. It's a best kept secret. When the people in the corner moved in 15 years ago, they thought they were taking a chance, you know. The neighborhood was kind of dicey, but it's turned out to be such a great investment. Wesley, anything else you'd like me to say? Okay.
Ready to hear. I'm good.
Okay.
I think we're good. Is there any other notable ones around here? No, right?
Well, not on this block, and
on the way back, we could just walk and see if we see anything.
Well, we could. A block down and then up are some absolute jewels. There's 3 that
Do you
are.
mind just walking really quick down that street and wrapping around?
Yeah.
We can do that.
Let's just do that, and we're done for the day.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Awesome. I think that block here was awesome.
No,
The
this,
only reason I want to stay here a little bit more is because the noise level is really
Right.
low. So just in case if it's too loud there, we might get a little bit more footage here, if anything, right?
okay. And see, the irony is, of course, that it's usually a very quiet street. Just somebody's using a buzzsaw or something.
No, this street's good. That's not super close. That shouldn't be the.
No, I think we'll be okay. The Royal Point Sienna tree over here. How about the brick chimney? I'm in Southeast Florida. Look at the design. This is a home that goes back. It could go back in its style to late 1700s New England. I mean, look at the place. And the great thing about it is that the guy who married Mayor Riley's daughter, he came from Connecticut. He was a naval photographer that met her at a naval air station down at Dinner Key in Coconut Grove. But I mean, just look at this place. And again, this was a piney woods here. All of that was leveled to make way for this. Let's walk on down here. I want to show you something else you're going to find very interesting. In fact, we can take it up just a half a block here, Wesley, then we're going to go left or west. I'm going to show you this intersection that's just a mind blower.
Why did they name it Shenandoah?
Well, it conjures up the image of the beautiful Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. So, you know, it's a very positive image. It's a great valley. I've never been to it, true confession, but it's just absolutely gorgeous. There's the Shenandoah River there, and there's this great valley that flanks the river. And you'll find about 3 or 4 subdivisions in this greater Shenandoah neighborhood with the name Shenandoah in them. Shenandoah South, Shenandoah Amended. It just goes on and on. But there's a few jewels over here I want to show you. The Indian cherry hedge. It bears a lot of fruit come each spring. How about the sea grape tree? So far inland. Usually these are along the shorelines. This was also very edible. The pioneers used this. They made jam and preserves out of it. What I want to do is just take you up to 10th at Shady and then take you down to the intersection. And I think you're going to find 3 great homes here. How about this jewel here? I always feel like I'm in the south of Spain or even in Valencia where I go a lot because my wife comes in there. When I look at this Spanish style or Mediterranean style home. And those windows up top are great. They're not the original casements. They're more aluminum, but they really look like the earlier versions of it. Let's take you up here. We can cross over here. Just a wonderful, quiet neighborhood. I mean, look at the designs here, the different levels of roof, which is really what we call a bungalow style, even though it's masonry. The different, what we call a gabled roof. That's a gabled roof there. This is Mediterranean. These were all built in the mid-1920s. Simple Mediterranean flares right here on these buildings. Look at the tiles up there at the top of the roof line. Now, there's a couple things at the intersection, though, I think you're really going to find fascinating. So I want you all to look at the home on the right here on the corner. This was a home of a longtime Dade County Sheriff, D.C. Coleman, who served as sheriff from the late 20s until the mid-1940s. These are Bismarck palms here. You can barely see it, but it's a great house with an open porch. The house was more or less shut down and abandoned about 15 years ago when the woman across the street who restored that beauty bought this and restored this. D.C. Coleman was a man who helped break a case, the heinous kidnapping and murder of a young boy way down in Princeton, Florida in deep South Dade in 1938. There's been at least a couple books written about that case, incidentally. This was his home. And Coleman was bedeviled by the fact that Miami was the most open gambling place imaginable in the 30s, into the 40s, into the beginning of the 50s. So that really kind of haunted him during his reign. Look at this jewel over here, built in 1925. This was shuttered. It looked like it might come down when a guy with deep pockets and a tremendous sense of preservation bought the building. How about the sun deck there at the second level? Isn't this amazing? A 1925 home. And I can remember interviewing about 30 years ago when I was walking through here, a lady whose husband built this home. And they had moved into it, you know, right at the beginning. This is a masterful restoration. I've been inside it. Each of the rooms has been very carefully restored. Look at this place here. He kind of sunk a pool over there. But if you saw this 10, 12 years ago when it was shuttered, you'd say, oh my God, it doesn't have much of a future. Just a terrific place. Now I've got one other home in the corner, the next corner I want to take you to, and point that out for you because it's got a sort of a great history too. Oh, it's just fabulous. You ought to see the inside, Wesley, you wouldn't believe it. I've been in there a couple times. Well, you know something? Somebody like you deserves it because you're working about 24 hours a day. You definitely deserve that. There's no doubt.
I love the porch.
Yeah, the porch is wonderful. Yeah, you can really kick back and relax there. This is an absolute jewel here, built in 1925. It's a Ludovici tile roof. The house was in pretty rundown shape when an African-American businesswoman bought it about 15, 20 years ago and did a major restoration. It's got a wraparound veranda. It has a garage apartment that's detached on the side, which is interesting because normally these garage apartments in this neighborhood were rented in the winter to visitors. People coming in on Highway 41, 8th Street, sometimes would rent. Here's the garage apartment over here. But just look at the house. Look at the wraparound veranda on this house. Now she's also the one that owns this house across the way. Look at this here. How about the paddle fans there? You talk about an open porch all the way around. Textured stucco. It's very Mediterranean in its influences, but it's also South Florida with that wide open veranda. Garage apartment in the back. And of course a tree-lined street, which makes it even better. Great. Okay, we can walk on back then.
We'll walk back. We're done.
Sounds good. Sounds great. That was fun. I mean, it was our first go-around, and it worked out, I thought, pretty well.
I think we're starting. I think we got this.
Great. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Oh, man.
Should I take this?
Yeah, you
Take
can
it off here? Okay.
We're done with interview, right?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay. Sounds good.
We're done. I think we got enough footage, no?
I think we got a lot of stuff. Yeah.
We can probably make 2 videos of it.
Yeah, well, one for the Grove and one for Shenandoah. We're going to take two out of each, right?
No, what? And this is neighborhood.
Oh, it's a great neighborhood. See, I walk it all the time. It's just so hot now. Unless I get out early in the morning, I can't really walk it.
Right.
But I'll tell you, the weather turns beautiful late October all the way through April. Yeah. Oh, it's a dream.
I used to walk it, bike it, run
Yeah.
it. That was good.
Same here, because I grew up here.
5,000 stuff.
Oh, that's great.
Halfway there.
Now, you could certainly meet 10,000 today to keep this pace up.
Yeah, I have an open house.
Oh my God.
I just do mid-century house up front. So the neighborhood. So when you shop?
So, somebody listening.
I'm averaging about like 25 at a time. But I'm really trying not to really